step number 1 of Theo's famous dough. You need a scale, you need a cup, you need good organic flour. All-purpose is fine. This is going to be part of it. It's not all going to be all-purpose. You got to pick how much all-purpose you want. You know, this is going to be the majority of your dough content. You got to think about this very carefully. 500 is enough for 3 pies, 3 big pies. I'm gonna do 650. I'm gonna do 650. I'm trying to make good 5 to 6 pies. That's a good amount. So I'm gonna do 650 of the organic, all-purpose, and then I'm gonna measure this out in here. So right now I am at 344. I'm going to do 350 and then I'm going to do another 300 to get 650. And you see, little by little, this has to be exact. Fortunately, this is the best way to make this dough. There you go. That's good. So like any dough, we're already at 342. Oh, we went over. We're going to end up with 357. So what do we have? We had 350, now 357. Add that up. The most important thing is you have an exact number. So I also like to document everything. So all-purpose was 350 and then 357. Now, the next component is going to be your whole wheat. Why? The whole wheat content makes it so that it binds together. It's stickier. It's more easy to work with when you're stretching it so you don't get any holes. This we found through the test of time. I like to put in 10%. 10 and 10, so that's 3.5, and 3.5, that's 7. So we're going to add 7 grams of whole wheat. And then we're also going to add bread flour. Bread flour has more yeast, so it's more rise, more gluten, those binding fibers. So we're going to add another 10 grams of bread flour. And this is all just to make the dough a little bit better to work with. If you just do all-purpose, that's fine. Now over here, we have some whole wheat, organic whole wheat. Well, we stick to organic. And that's what makes the pizza not make you gain weight. Good dough with organic flour. This was on clearance for $1.90. This is some organic bread flour. This was on clearance for $1.80. So, I mean, you could find some amazing deals if you go to the clearance. Now, especially with the whole wheat, which is what I'm measuring out here, you got to be careful. Because a little bit goes a long way. And you see we're up to like, okay, well 7.5 will be fine. So we're going to notate that in our notes. We did 7.5. But just this little bit will make a big difference. So we went back and we put in 7.5. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add all this. It's very important you get accurate numbers. So we got 707 plus 714, and then 7, and then 10. That's 724.5. Might as well round it out to 725. 725 grams of flour. I'm going to go back and put that other 0.5 of whole wheat. This takes a lot of patience, but it really does do the best dough. So I'm going to go add some more whole wheat. Our next step is the salt. So I like to get pink Himalayan salt, and I grind it myself. And that ensures that you have the right balance of minerals and healthy components in your salt, not just high in sodium. So if you can use the good salt, use the good salt. Any good salt, any smoked salt, any natural salt. But pink salt is my favorite. It has the best amount of magnesium, potassium, iodine, all those different minerals, trace minerals, and trace amounts. So we're going to grind out, I typically use about 10% of this number, which would be 7.2, and I multiply that times 2. So we're going to go overall, we're going to say 15. We're going to use 15 grams, 15 to 20. Let's go ahead and let's do 20. We're going to do 20 grams of pink salt. And put pink salt. $20. With my 500 gram blend, I've done as much as 17. So 20 will be fine. 20 will be fine. And that number was based on 20% of this. Around 20% of this number, right? So we're going to write in there around 20% of flour. Around 20% of the flour, which is around 20 grams. All right, we're going to do the salt. And about 5 minutes later of a lot of grinding, we got our 20 grams, 20.1, rounded off, fine, of salt. All of this goes in there. Make sure there's nothing left. This salt likes to clump up. It's because it has no moisture. See? Look at that. Get all that in there. No error in that part, in that sense. All right. This is our dry. We're going to go ahead and we're going to mix this up. You've got your numbers on the table. You know exactly what you're dealing with. So the next part is going to be calculating how much water we're going to use. And I just like to whisk it for a while, just to make sure everything is all nice and blended up. All right, so now we're going to take this number, 725, and we're going to find our H2O based on hydration equal to, I like to go with 69%. That's usually the best one for hot ovens. So we're going to play it safe. We're going to do 67. Anything over 65 will be good for the household. So how do you get 67% of 725? Well, that's the magical question now, isn't it? We have to multiply times 0.67. And the answer is 485.75. So 485.75. I'm doing 67% so that if we do go over, it's fine. I like to go up to 69%. And then 70 is known as wet hydration, so it's really hard to work with that dough. We're going to go up to 67 and we'll try our best. The water has to be at 101 degrees Fahrenheit to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. You have to make sure that you keep your water temperature right. Otherwise, your yeast will not activate. You're not going to get the rise. That means you have to calculate your temperature in your water. You need a thermometer. And then you need good water. You can't just use any old water. The more pure the water, the better. If you want really good Italian dough, you got to get a bottle of water from Italy. You got to get an Aquafina or a Pellegrino, that's still water, something like that. So you get the best representation of that water from Italy. The dough doesn't matter as much, but the water does. All right, we got our water going here. This is my thermometer. Tells me exactly what temperature we're going to be at. This thermometer is constantly calibrated because I use it for so many things. So when we get to, this thermometer is off by 6 degrees. So when we get to 94, 95, that's when we got to pull away the water. Meanwhile, we're going to measure our yeast. The yeast should match the salt. So remember we had 20 grams of salt Now we're going to have 20 grams of dry active yeast, and I used a Fleischmann. Let me get that measured out. All right, here's our yeast. It's in the fridge. I always keep it nice and cold so that yeast stays alive. I'm going to go to 20 on this one. Okay, went over. Perfect. 20 on the dot. Perfect. First, we're going to pour our water into one of these, whatever cup you want. And you're going to measure that out first. So now we're going to go back to here, cover up your yeast. Make sure your yeast is nice and covered up. Okay. All right, make sure this is set to 0. I like these small scales because they're so exact. And you're going to measure out your 485.75. Probably going to get to 486. That's fine. All right, we stopped our water at 97. 97 plus 6, that's 203. It's kind of rising, so we got to get it cooler. We're going to let it cool off for a little bit. We want it to be below 105. All right, so I tell you, we went past the 487.6. Take our temperature here real quick. Make sure we're not too hot. (91, 93, 94). That's 100. That's 101. When it starts to come down, then we know. Right now it's testing at 102. Because remember, it's 6 below. Yeah, so it's coming back down. So we're at about 102. That's good. That's a good temperature to have. See where the next marking is. The next reading. With these thermometers, you just gotta wait. So it's going, yeah. It's between 1. Oh yeah, we're good. We're at 102. 96 plus 6, that's 102 because it's 6 below. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to pour in our yeast while stirring. Okay, now I'm using a chopstick. And I'm making sure that it's all getting in there nice and wet. You don't want any leftover dried yeast that you're not going to use. You see this stuff on the top of my stick here. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to scrape that off. Throw it in there. Get it in there until it's nice. Now the other thing I like to add to this, which a lot of people don't, is I like to add a little bit of sugar. I like to add a little bit of brown sugar, unrefined. So if you got a little bit of brown sugar, I'd say about a half a teaspoon. Put it in there. That'll make that yeast really come alive. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you're going to put that sugar in there. See how it's all nice and milky now? Now you got to let it sit and do its thing. You're going to put this up by the windowsill for about 15 minutes. All right, put some brown sugar in there. Just a little pinch. Perfect. This looks really good. See how even it is, how it's already foamy in the middle. Now you're going to put a small top. It doesn't have to be very elaborate. Maybe like a little plate or something. You got one right here. Yeah, here you go. There you go. You're going to cover it up. You're going to put it over by the windowsill. Come back in about 15 minutes. So I put one of these plastic things on there better because it has a way of you having a little bit of air coming in there. You don't want to make your yeast die. You need it to breathe. It's a living organism. So you let a little bit of air go in there. You know, not too much. You know, just enough. That'll really bring it alive. So it's better to have just, you know, something that's light that won't be weighing it down, suffocating the yeast. Meanwhile, I want to see, I'm curious, because if this works, I like to keep my numbers accurate. This was our final number, 487.5, in our water at 101 to 102 degrees. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate 487.5, and we're going to divide that from the 725, and it says it's 67.24. So that's good. So we're still at 67.24 hydration. That's good. That's going to be a good number. Like I said, I usually do 69, but given that we thought we were going to go over 67, 67 is what they tell you is a good sweet spot. 69 is closer to 70, but it just usually works out. So this is an experiment in a way, but it should be fine. 67 to 69 if you want to do 68. Each one of these degrees, when it gets to be 1 degree apart, doesn't really matter. 1% apart. It's when you do like more than 3% increase in water, decrease, that you'll see a difference in your crust. So 67 is fine. It's actually, you know, a little bit more than 67. That's good. And when we start working the dough, we'll know more about it. So, all right. So here we are. This is what happens after about 15 minutes. You can see the amount of growth in that yeast. That means that your yeast is good. If your yeast didn't do this, then you got bad yeast. Your water was too warm or your water was too cold. So it's very important you have this foaminess. All right, now we're going to pour this into our flour. And it's always to be best aided by somebody when doing this. Slowly aid. There you go. Okay. Slowly aid. You just want to get everything very well distributed. You're going to mix it on your own after all the water has been distributed. All right. There you go. There we go. See how I'm just kind of, wherever the water lands, I'm making sure that the flour kind of covers it up well. And then kind of blotting it down. Keep it coming, Aid. There you go. Keep it coming, Aid. Yeah, and it's always, even though this might seem harder, it's always easier when somebody's helping you out, because then you can really get the water well distributed. And I'd be mixing this up normally more, but for the sake of this video, all the way. Get all that foam in there. Oh yeah. All right, now we're gonna mix this up. Now, as you can see, we've been working on this dough for about a good 5 to 10 minutes. And we got it all nice and incorporated. Now, the next step is to take it onto our board and knead it out for a few minutes. And then we're going to put it right back in here with a wet towel in the oven, dry, cold oven. And we're going to let it sit in there for a few hours. Here's our board. Now, the main thing you want to always do is spread some nice flour on top of there and into your hand. Nice. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to scoop our dough on here. And it's going to be sticky. It's going to be sticky. Now my brother, who's a professional, always says, don't be afraid of the dough. It's not going to get you. You're about to get your hands up in there. I'm always afraid it's going to break apart. There it is. And see, there's nothing left behind back there. So making sure that there's every last little piece of the dough is right here. And now you get one of these bench scrapers. These are great. And you get the bench scrape away. Alright. Now, before we get started, I try to get a little bit of dough. Just a sprinkle. You don't want to add to your dough content, to your flour content, take away from your hydration. That's just enough to there. Now this is going to go pretty fast. And what you're doing is that you're taking, you're stretching, and you're folding. And you're getting the dough as needed to get all that, getting flour as needed to get all those pieces of dough off of you. Notice I'm trying not to stay too close to the dough. There we go. And you'll notice that as you do this, you're just taking, you're patting it down, and you're kind of kneading it, folding it into little pockets. What's happening is that it is drying out a little bit without using too much flour. You don't want to use too much flour because then you won't be at 67. You're going to end up like at 65. And then your dough might end up a little dry. So you want to keep it nice and wet. That's why we're doing this so fast. See that? And what I'm doing is I'm folding the bottom and making it a perfect ball, like so. Now, once you're done with that, what you do is, this is where the olive oil comes in. Some people like to put it into the actual dough. I like to put it in the bowl where you're going to be leaving it in. Right? There's one spot. And I would clean that bowl out before you put it in there. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. Don't take too long because your flour will stick. Your dough ball will stick to this wooden board. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to coat the bowl with olive oil. Coat that bowl up with olive oil. Oh yeah, just like so. And then we're going to take some olive oil, spread on our hands. Good amount. Get your hands all nice and full of olive oil. And you're going to spread it all over this dough ball. That's how I feel the olive oil thing goes best. Better than putting it into the dough. I found that it doesn't help the dough really stretch out much. You end up with a lot of those window panes we were talking about earlier. So as you can see, we have ourselves an amazing dough ball. And it's actually really manageable now that you got the olive oil on it. You know, so just go ahead and dump it in there. And now we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure that we put a towel on top of here that's nice and wet. Put it in the oven. All right. And I went ahead and I put hot water on this towel. So it's really nice and wet with some hot water, which will help the temperature. We're going to make some room in the oven. Move the cast iron out of the way. That's our pizza stone anyways. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set this down right on top of there. Alright, we're going to let it sit there. And we're going to make our timer. Make sure that this towel is stretched out so it doesn't slump in the middle. You don't want it touching the dough too much. Yeah, make sure you stretch out that towel. Alright, we're going to go ahead and we're going to time ourselves. Make sure the oven is off. You don't want the oven on. You're gonna come back in 1, 2, 3. Maybe you want 2.5. 1, 2, 2.5 hours. That's what you really want. There you go. 2.5 hours time. Come back and see where our dough is at. The sauce starts here. You have a saucepan going at medium, letting all that fat render. You can use olive oil. I'm using a little bit of pork fat and olive oil, but you're ending up coating that entire bottom with oil. Why? Because you're going to fill the whole entire thing up with tomato. So you need a certain amount of fat in there. Now you're going to dice up 2 yellow onions. Hopefully that's enough. We might go with 3 depending on their size. You're going to dice those up as small as you can. Bam. Saw how quick? Well, if you don't know how to dice an onion, I'll show you. But there's our onion. Now we're going to use our bench scraper. We're going to put it in that pot over there that's probably steaming right now. You're going to hear a big old shh. Get ready, folks. I'm trying to do it real slow now so you see exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. Alright, our onions are in there. We're putting in some oregano. Just be till you start smelling it. That's how I gauge my spices. Alright, smell the oregano. That's good. You know how much of it was in there. It's very floral right now. You could really smell that herb on top of those onions, and it smells amazing. That's how much you want. If you add some more, it doesn't matter. You're not going to taste it any more than this. These guys are my favorites. Bay leaves. Throw 2 of them in there. Now the sauce wouldn't be complete without some of this. I put in a lot of garlic. Garlic is super important for you. You do not know how many bacteria, how many inflammations, how many infections you fight, how many viruses you prevent. Garlic is super important. If you don't like garlic, then don't put any in there. But I like to put a lot of garlic in there. And it's enough to cover the entire bottom with a thin layer. Remember, this is going to be filling up with tomato sauce, so you probably won't even notice it. All you do is you take the side of your knife, smash it down, poof. And then you take off this tiny little end here. That's basically where the root is. You slice that off. Keep smashing it down as much as you can. And then you end up with like this kind of discombobulated. This will break down in our sauce. Make sure you ain't got no part of the shell in there. And put that in your sauce. I've been mixing those in there. And I think we're good. So I'm going to use 3 out of the 5. So 3 cloves of garlic is a good middle ground. You don't want it, I don't know. I think that's good. I like to look at everything. If everything looks even, then we're good. And that's pretty much 3 cloves of garlic. Now we're going to add a little bit of pink salt. And it's just coarse, because it'll break down with the sauce. This is an all-day thing. You don't have to worry about grinding or anything. So I'm just sprinkling in some salt. Also some pepper. I'm going to grind in some pepper. There's some red wine vinegar. What you want to do is you just want to, so you hear that, very little. Just to give a little bit of that red wine flavor. Not too much. It'll cook down though. It'll disappear. You'll be left with a good flavor. Last thing I put in here is some sugar. I usually have brown, but I ran out. And I'm just going to pour a little bit on top of there. Like so. Some organic paprika. So give it some good smokiness. Just enough to just lightly cover the top. It's also going to give it some color. I put in a lot of this because, remember, you're going to fill this up with tomato sauce. It's going to not come through as much. So look at this paste. See that? That's beautiful. Now what we want to do is taste that. Everything's coming through real well. Garlic, onion, and the oils. Very nice. Now we're going to fill this up with 2 cans of Cento. This is the can that my buddy from New Jersey always tells me to use. This is the Rambudanza Memorial Sauce right here for Rambo, the Bodanza. This is what he uses. Alright, you want to slowly, very slowly pour that in there. Very slowly. You don't want it spilling anywhere. And now you're going to go and you're going to take your little spoon and you're going to go ahead and mix it all up. Your temperature at this point should be at 25 to 30% heat. Alright, we're going to do our second can here. And you got to be careful because it'll start bubbling. And depending on how high you got the heat, it will get you in the face. Here's two. You add the third, is up to you. We let this go for about 8 hours, low and slow. You want to cover it up with a heavy plate and come by every hour or so and give it some stirring. But you'll see it'll start to bubble in about an hour. Alright, before we say goodbye to this for 8 hours, we're going to do one last thing. The secret to the sauce is right here in the splendor that is South Florida. Some fresh basil from my favorite tree. Come here, man. Come here, man. Get the big leaves. Get the big leaves and make sure that there's no flowers on top, because that sometimes alters the flavor. Get some big leaves. Get some big leaves right here. Get some big leaves. Got some big leaves right there. Got some big leaves right here. That's okay. Let's get out here, see who's out here. These out here, sometimes they grow big back here. Hard to show you. Yeah, these back here, they're growing big. There's some back here. Yeah, that one's growing big, boy. There you go. This guy up here. All that right there. The ones with the flowers, you want to leave that alone. They're right here. So you got yourself a handful of basil. That's good for a big old pot like that. What you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you're going to cut all this up. Nah, I would leave it whole. Just leave it whole. Just squeeze it and throw it in. Alright, so here's our basil. That's it, man. You just let everything break down inside there. Put in lots of olive oil. Lots and lots of olive oil. Mix that up and put your plate in there. I'm already beginning to hear it sizzle, which means it's already getting hot. Alright, so it's been about 3 hours. And we have not touched this thing in the entire time. So this is going to be the moment of truth. We're going to see what we got here. Our dough has been in the oven for around 3 hours. And this is what we got. Looks a little wet. But better wet than dry. That's for sure. That means that it has definitely gotten its moisture and retained it. And obviously the wet towel helped with that too. So I'm pretty sure we're up to about 69% at this point. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to knead it into a nice ball again and then separate it into our pies. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get a little bit of flour on your surface again and on your hands again. Just like so. And then I like to get a spatula and just kind of scoop it all in there. Should come off fairly easy. Oh yeah. It's not a problem. Seems to be overproofed. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to add a little bit more flour, get it to where it was before, and then separate it. The olive oil will help it stop from sticking as well. So just a little bit of flour. And we're just going to spread that on top. I'm just gonna start kneading this sucker. Alright, we have shaped this up. You can see it's nice and tender. Now, I would let this sit for a few minutes and then cut it up and roll them into your balls. But yeah, this is basically it. So I'm going to let it sit for about another hour or so. Let it plump up even more.
Oh, I'm the one you want to meet. Just on my
Meanwhile, this is what's going on with our sauce over here. Oh yeah, we got a nice boil. Now to our sauce, which is a little bit too watery, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add a little bit of tomato paste. We'll get that. We got some organic tomato paste here. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add a nice little heaping in there. Let's give it 2 and one more 3. That should help it thicken up. We're gonna add Italian seasoning. A lot of seasoning. Give it some flavor, some depth. We're also going to add some organic olive oil, extra virgin. Drizzle some of that on top of there. And then our final procedure, before we let it go another couple hours. It's been about 2 to 3 hours since it started. It's been on low. So we're going to taste it. And just like the Italians right here. It's starting to bubble. Close it up.
Oh yeah.
Go back for some more.
What you say?
This is just too good. Not to indulge.
Come on, Ziggy.
Big I'm adding in there Parmigiano. Or Parmesan. The block is better, but we don't have the block. Give it a nice coat on top. And let it all burn away. Ooh, it's going to be delicious. All right. Gotta taste the latest. Parmesan's there. Oh, man. So good.
I'm not yes.
I just found out we need more pizza. So I'm running to make more dough because that's not going to be enough. And I got my measurements. I'm mixing up my flour. Now this time I didn't measure the salt. That's what I wanted to show you. I just go ahead and I dip. See that? Taste that. If you can taste the salt content, you're good. And that's my only difference in making this dough. Also, this one is 69%. So we'll have a little tasting contest. And we'll have some nice little bowls, pizzas to compare. The 67% or the 69%. We're starting with more water over here.
Oh, that's Sikh of Araby, everybody. From a foreign land comes a foreign man.
And this is one of our finished products. About to go in the oven. And here's a piece of Damian's pizza. If it gets all soggy and it goes down, it's no good. You can see on the bottom, perfect. Didn't get very brown. There didn't leave very much in there. Yep, looks like a good slice.